We have a guest requesting up Megatron. Welcome up, Megatron. What's your question?
So I was wondering, like, how you can tell the difference of, like, how you, like, if you find a dinosaur skeleton, right, how you can tell if it's from the Triassic, Jurassic, or Cretaceous.
So that generally has to do with the stratum of rock it's in. If in the field, there's no way to confirm it. So generally, we have to go off of known species that are found with it. For example, there are loads of different kinds of ammonites that they make like field guides for to say if you're in a stratum where you're finding these kinds of ammonites, you're in this geological period. But that's obviously not 100% guaranteed. So then to really confirm its age, we locate the volcanic or igneous rock strata above it that's closest to the fossil, and the igneous rock strata below it that's closest to the fossil, because igneous rock can be reliably dated using radiometric dating, unlike the actual bone of the fossil and the matrix that the fossil is in. So then we date those two, and then we get a range of dates for where it could have been alive.
Oh, I see. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming up, Megatron. Have a good night. Welcome up, Lazy Ego.
So, like, how big was the T-Rex compared to a human?
It was pretty large. I think you would probably come up to like around its knee. I don't know if you could like I mean, I don't really know how to describe it off the top of my head. If you could reach up and touch its belly, if you were standing underneath
it's about 2 people tall.
It's more.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be a lot taller.
Yeah, it's not
So I'm guessing.
like if you had
Is it-
2 people stacked on top of each other, they would reach.
Yeah.
The top of the second person's head would reach its back.
That's true.
So does that make it all since they were like the biggest like competitor out there? Does that make it true that like Argentinosaurus had to use water to like support its weight and stuff?
No. Dinosaurs have what we call pulmonary diverticula in their body, which are expansions of the respiratory system. In a mammal, most of the space that's not organ or bone is going to be taken up by like muscle and fat. But in dinosaurs, most of that is air. They also have hollow bones. So the density of a dinosaur is going to be a lot lower than the density of a mammal. And for a while, for people to get those ideas that dinosaurs had to use water to support their weight, they were looking at big mammals like elephants as models for how heavy they would be for their size. But we should really be looking at like birds and crocodiles because they're substantially lighter in comparison to the amount of space they take up.
Mm-hmm. And one more question, sorry, but the Argentinosaurus, did it have any like real carnivores that went after it, or was it just like
Yeah. We don't have a lot of direct evidence of predation, but across history or across like geological time, sauropods have been preyed on historically by both tyrannosaurids, carcharodontosaurids, and allosaurids, like since the late Jurassic up through the early Cretaceous in Asia and North America, and Argentinosaurus coexisted with a bunch of big carcharodontosaurids in South America. So I imagine they were probably eating it.
Wait, but how big is the Argentinosaurus? Wouldn't it be like massive?
Yeah, it's incredibly large. But if you've ever seen a video of like lions killing a giraffe, or Komodo dragons killing, like a wildebeest, not a wildebeest, like a buffalo, I think is
Yeah.
one of their primary prey items. You don't have to be larger than your prey to take it down. If you have a bunch of carnivores, what we do call they call it mobbing for modern animals. So, like for example, if there's an animal drowning in water and there are crocodiles around it, it's not just going to be one crocodile going for it, and that animal could probably fight off one crocodile. But if you have like 4 or 5 giant carcharodontosaurs going after an Argentinosaurus, it doesn't really stand much of a chance.
So are you hinting at that like Tyrannosaurus Rex, all that had like some sort of bacterial bite to it?
No, that's not really well established. And in fact, we actually walked back that idea for Komodo dragons because they, like a lot of other monitor lizards, actually have proper venom glands. and their saliva is toxic. It's not septic.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Welcome up, Andy Osray.
Hey,
Hello. What's your question?
um, I have this question about Megalodon. Namely, if you know anything about ancient species in the ocean.
Yeah.
Um, so I know that great white sharks. There's a hypothetical theory that they looked identical, like visually they would look the same. But what's the main difference between a great white shark and megalodon? Because I assumed it was just how much an animal can eat to get bigger, and that's why they are different species.
Well, great white sharks primarily eat pinnipeds, which are like seals and sea lions, whereas megalodon primarily ate cetaceans in generally shallower waters. So great white sharks are built for kind of fast bursts of movement in the open ocean, but recent reconstructions of megalodon body fossils have had it like have a more elongated body shape, kind of like a tiger shark or a nurse shark, where it has a long upper half of its dorsal fin and a short lower half. Like, let me see if I can find an updated reconstruction. Yeah, it has it. There are. I'm trying to find the name of the paper. But there was a paper that was talking about using its like niche position as a like a shallow water cetacean hunter to reconstruct its body with more accuracy. Um, Let me find the name of the paper so I can recommend it. Megalodon body shape. Body dimensions. Is it the 2020 one?
Because like on a lot of videos, maybe like on YouTube, it shows it looking more great white shark, namely because of the white underbelly and dark s- coloring on the top side of the creature's body.
Okay, so here it is. The name of the paper is White Shark Comparison Reveals a Slender Body for the Extinct Megatooth Shark, Otodus megalodon. It's by P.C. Stearns, and I think it is publicly available.
Okay. Second question. Is it possible with with the current ecosystem in the ocean that, let's say, a great white or any other type shark that is more of a carnivore, not like the whale shark, to be almost the same size as the megalodon?
Um,
Namely, thinking
Certainly,
about the blue whale because it's uh, a it eats more
well,
squids
the
and
blue whale is a carnivore. It's a macropredatory carnivore.
yeah, but I mean like like how there's also the animal that was called the leviathan,
Yeah, Livyatan melveli.
the very big tooth whale.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So are you asking if a whale could get to the size of megalodon, or if a shark could get to the size of megalodon?
a shark, like a modern day shark with like it starts right now, let's say million years from the future. Would it be possible a possibility of a shark to be the top ocean predator?
Several million years in the future, probably, assuming that the niches that are currently occupied by large ocean predators like orcas get freed up, and we start getting a diversity of, smaller and mid-sized whales in much greater numbers in the oceans. There are just really not enough whales in the ocean right now to support something the size of megalodon eating them.
Oh, so basically with every like I'm guessing for evolution, uh, there always has to be a power vacuum, basically meaning that something has to disappear for something else to uh evolve to for that specific niche.
You're kind of getting at it, yeah.
Like what you said is the orca population would have to go extinct, so just so for an animal to be able to evolve, because that
Yeah.
orcas are more they basically prevent any big animals, because that would technically be their food before that particular animal would be able to get to that size.
Yes, basically.
Okay.
Generally speaking, like you don't get evolution into niches that are already occupied. When animals compete with each other, it's usually because they're co-evolving, and they're competing as they evolve. It's really hard for an animal to make a switch into a niche that's already occupied, and that's not really something that we ever see in the fossil record.
Right. But is it always possible that two like let's say Homo sapiens, we had multiple ancestors, but we all diverged into our own niche. But is it possible to have two common ancestors that diverge and then join into one?
Um, what do you mean?
So I'm gonna use Homo us as Homo sapiens and any other
Okay,
humanoid.
wait. I think I understand what you're talking about. So you
Okay.
mean one species splits into two,
Yes.
then those two descendants hybridize and form one more species.
Yes. That they so it branched off to two different species, but then they reemerged into one.
Yeah, that can happen. I don't know of any examples of that occurring off the top of my head, but there are definitely. I mean, every hybrid that forms generally shares a common ancestor.
Right.
So, like for example, there are calculations that go into for birds, how long it'll take two species to completely overlap in their populations if the rate of hybridization keeps increasing. Because generally, how speciation occurs is two populations of the same species will get separated and then they'll evolve differently because they live in different locations. And then when they're forced back together by some occurrence, they will then start to merge. They'll start to interbreed with each other again, and if they're still reproductively compatible, then they will. The number of hybrids that come out in each generation keep increasing, and you start getting second generation hybrids and third generation hybrids, and so on. So it is
And
certainly
then
possible.
that would basically make its own species after that.
Yeah, yeah. We would generally it gets like lumped into whichever species of those two is older, and then we would call that whatever species it is.
Okay. Because I was mainly also using as an example, like the wolf hybrid,
Hmm.
the wolf slash dog hybrid. If that let I'm gonna use that another example. If that species basically keeps on interbreeding with each other or breeding between the wolf and the dog, um, and a specific period of time until the number of wolf hybrids or hybrids of those two species are large enough to just start interbreeding with each other instead of using the two separate species um, as as a
Okay.
I, I don't know the term, but basically using those two species as a source to reproduce.
Yeah, I mean, usually when we start to consider the possibility of two species merging is when hybrids start mating successfully with either one of their parent species.
Yeah.
And then that starts to like really blur the line with, are these two individual species now, or is this just one population with two subspecies?
Mm, okay. Uh, third. This is my last question, but because geo tech the plates and the tectonic plates that occurred within billions of years of Earth, and there's multiple lives. Do you think that there's a possibility that there's fossils that are underneath the water, but the animal that is in that surrounding that rock is actually a land animal? Is what I mean.
Um, yeah, no, I certainly think there are probably fossils of areas that were once terrestrial that are now underwater. In general, aquatic environments tend to fossilize terrestrial animals, whether or not those environments were once aquatic.
Mm.
So, you find
How come? How come
uh,
does how come oceanic preserve fossils much better?
because for a fossil to form, there needs to be rapid burial. And in general, environments that are on land tend to be what we call erosive environments. So the ground is being carried away by wind or rain. Whereas water is what we call a depositional environment, where dirt is being brought into that water by the same wind and rain.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, when a land animal dies in water, it's more likely to fossilize than if it died on land.
Uh, if that's if Because I know you can't clone any animal because of the DNA has a half life, and we basically can't clone any dinosaurs. But if there was a let's say an animal that was like deep in the ocean where it's cold and um because there's also not a lot of oxygen or like oxygen poor area, would that probably preserve like the skeleton? So if we did collect that skeleton, do you think it would have been a possibility to clone it, or would it
No,
still?
it would still not be able to be cloned, unfortunately. The As far as I'm aware, the degradation of DNA doesn't have much to do with oxygen availability. It's just kind of a reaction that occurs over time because the molecule is unstable.
Mm,
Like DNA just degrades as it exists. RNA is not as unstable, but it does still degrade over time.
right. I'm guessing the only animals that we could ever clone is like woolly mammoths or any ice age that were any bodies that were covered by ice.
Yeah, generally only anything from like the Pleistocene.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
See ya. You too.
Yep.
All right. Welcome up, Knox Mosher. Hello. What's your question, Knox Mosher?
Do you mind talking about jobs in the paleontology field?
Um, I have not worked in the field for so long, only a little over a year, so I might not be your best source, but I will say what I can.
Okay, so after like going to college and stuff, like studying geology and biology, all that stuff, how do you like make money for that kind of stuff?
Currently, I'm actually still in my undergrad. I'm just doing paleontology research. I work as a research assistant at a museum. I don't actually work in their paleontology department. I work in their ornithology department, but my research involves paleontology because I'm doing stuff with, transition of dinosaurs into birds and all that. Um, and I get paid by grants. I get research grants, and there's one that covers a certain amount of researchers working on a certain amount of projects. And so I wrote a project proposal, and they were like, "Yeah, that's a good idea. You can get lumped in with this person. You'll work under them because your research is relevant to their overarching field of research, which is." About reconstructing the evolutionary history of the Anseriformes, which is a group of ducks, or it's the group that includes all ducks. And so I got placed onto that project doing like my own little sub thing.
Oh, Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in general, a lot of paleontologists make money by doing like research grants for museums, or they work as professors for colleges, and they do research as part of their job as a professor, but they get like paid to teach. Welcome up, cool guy.
What's up, man? Yo, I just had a question. So, like, I know how like birds are dinosaurs or whatever, but it's my understanding that like there's like two main groups of dinosaurs. I have no idea how to pronounce them, so you have to forgive me. But like, I know there's like two, right?
Yeah,
What are the names?
there's the ornithischians and the saurischians.
Right, right. And now from what I read, I might be wrong again, but like the birds come from the second one.
Yeah, birds are saurischians, which means lizard-hipped, and ornithischian means bird.
Yeah. So that's why how, but they're the bird-hipped ones don't aren't the birds.
Yeah, so this gets really bizarre. So when dinosaurs were first discovered, no one thought that birds were dinosaurs, because it was like the 1800s in England, and they had two dinosaurs that they knew about. When the clade dinosaur was established, it was established based on Iguanodon and Megalosaurus. And Megalosaurus had hips that looked more like lizards and crocodiles because it had this like big pubic boot that hung down between its legs. And Iguanodon has the pubis and ischium both pointing backwards. So it's considered a saurischian, or sorry, an ornithischian. And birds also have a pubis that points backward. However, if you track the evolution of the like quote lizard-hip dinosaurs, the saurischians, as they get closer and closer to birds, you see a slow swinging of the pubis back towards the tail until eventually they kind of line up and they become parallel, just like we see in ornithischians. But there is a difference. So the hips of birds are definitively very saurischian. They don't look like ornithischian hips exactly. They look like kind of similar in their shape, but on a deeper level, it's like how bird wings and bat wings are different. So it's just like a fun naming quirk. It's like how the group Pseudasuchia, which means false crocodiles, includes all living crocodiles, because they initially didn't know that they were related to crocodiles. They just thought that they looked like crocodiles. But it turns out that Pseudasuchians are the ancestors of crocodiles. So
the Triceratops having a beak is like a coincidence then. They're not.
Yeah. The beak of Triceratops is formed differently than the beak of birds, as are the beaks of all ornithischians. They're formed with a predentary bone and an adaptation of the premaxilla. Birds don't have a predentary bone, which is what the lower part of the beak of an ornithischian dinosaur is made out of. They just have the maxilla and the mandible, and they have like a sheath that goes around it that makes that beak shape.
So is it not like super unlikely for them to be completely unrelated in the way it develops, but they can develop like at least on a physical superficial level a trait that's like super similar, like evolutionarily? Is that like unlikely or no?
Not particularly. There's a lot of convergent evolution. You know, we see flight evolve a bunch of times. When it evolved in the Ansoriopterigids and the pterosaurs and the mammals, it is all done with very similar structures that are slightly different, and we know they're from different sources because the animals that evolved them are very definitively not that closely related. But like a beak is really just a toothless section of bone covered in keratin that's used to cut rather than chew. And so, you could even see some fish as being kind of beaked, if you think about it.
Don't squids have beak? I just remembered.
What?
Don't squid have beak?
Yeah, squids and octopus do have beaks. But they're not even like, they don't even have jaws. They have basically these two little, I think they're calcium carbonate. I'm gonna double check this. Because I don't even think they're made of bone. Oh, they're made of chitin, not calcium carbonate. But they're not made of bone. They're made of a chitin material, and they're not jaws even. They're closer to like the teeth of snails. If you've ever seen a snail.
I didn't even know they had teeth. I thought they. I guess I didn't even know how they ate. I thought they just like absorb stuff through their body somehow.
No, yeah, snails have a little mouth with like a couple teeth in there.
I didn't know they. I
I
thought
have
they
no idea.
warped stuff off of things.
Also, why are we so clueless about the Spinosaurus? I feel
Oh
like
my
it just
God.
it seems to be the case that we know nothing about it.
What does it seem to be the case that we know nothing about?
Spinosaurus, like we keep discovering things that were radically different from our perception a few years ago.
Yeah, part of that is because the two labs that do most of the research on Spinosaurus are not very willing to collaborate. Another part of it is because we don't have the original physical specimens of Spinosaurus, and another part is because most of the specimens we have of Spinosaurus are different ages, and there are disagreements about what an adult Spinosaurus would look like because our reconstructions of the legs and tail are based on an individual that was not mature. Yeah.
Is it locked in that we think it was like a semi-aquatic animal?
No, that's a Spinosaurus being like a swimmer is still very much up for debate.
Is it Jurassic Park 3 thing in the running at all? Like his portrayal in Jurassic Park 3, is that just
Like it have not the tail. We know that the tail was for sure paddle shaped. The leg length of Spinosaurus is still very talked about. I think it has, in my opinion, I think it probably had longer legs than it is often reconstructed as.
really?
Not Jurassic Park 3 long, but I think it was probably a little bit higher off the ground.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, man. It's really interesting. Thank you
Thanks for coming up. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Have a good night.
You too, man.
Welcome up, Christmas Cats. What's your question, Christmas Cats?
You know the Jurassic World, Jurassic Park series?
Yes, I do. I'm familiar.
Which one's your favorite? Like, and
Um,
like, do you have like a favorite dinosaur from the series, or?
Totally. Probably my favorite Jurassic Park movie is the first Jurassic Park, because that's the one that's like it treats the dinosaurs the most like animals. I think they really behave like animals, and I like how restrained they are. You don't really see dinosaurs for most of the movie, and that makes them like almost more believable to me. I liked the first one a lot.
All right.
My favorite dinosaur out of all of them. That is a really good question. I really did like the raptors from Jurassic Park 3. I thought they were cool in there. I like how brightly colored they are. I like how the males and females have different colored eyes as well. I think that was a super like touch because some birds are like that.
Are you excited for the new Rebirth movie?
I am excited for that movie. I can't wait to watch it. Obviously Jurassic Park is not perfectly accurate by any means, but that does not mean that I do not enjoy it. I really like watching dinosaurs in anything, regardless of how much scientific rigor is taken when designing them.
Well, that was mostly it.
All right.
Hope you have a good night.
Yeah, you too, man. Have a good night. Thoughts on the woolly mice? The climate change is low-key cruel to bring a hairy animal. I think that there's some interesting potential with bringing back megafauna. However, like megafauna are in an interesting spot because, if we mess it up, we are completely dooming another set of species to go extinct again, basically, which is terrible. That's like a really awful thing. Currently, there's only one species that's gone extinct twice, and I would not wish that on any other group of animals.
Wait, what has gone extinct twice?
It's some kind of antelope that they were able to successfully clone with a surrogate, but it died when it was very young.
That sucks.
But megafauna also are really good at preventing climate change because they are really good at trapping carbon in their ecosystems. Welcome up, lesbian Dirk Strider. What's your question?
Hello, I have a couple today. My first one is, what's like the strangest fossil that we have, if there is one?
That is a really good question.
First one that comes to mind is the two-headed one.
Yeah, probably the two-headed one. We have a two-headed,
Is a two-headed fossilized plant?
not a plant. It's a two-headed.
Yeah,
Oh, you said
I
plant
said
fossil?
plant.
Oh, plant
Oh, I missed
fossil.
that.
Yeah.
Shoot. That's a really good question.
I mean, they're plants. How strange can they get?
They can get pretty strange.
Plants are pretty weird sometimes.
Yeah.
That is for
There are just some really bizarre structures. I would have to say, honestly, probably stromatolites. There are also those like big colonies, but stromatolites are these early, I think even Precambrian, very early like photosynthetic bacteria that are kind of they're I think they're technically plants because cyanobacteria are considered plants. Because that's like the main component of algae, and algae, as far as I'm aware, is a plant. But so they gather on rocks, and then over time they get covered over with minerals, and then the stromatolite bacteria then grow over those minerals, and so you have a fossil that's basically successive mats of cyanobacteria with little layers, like little pizzas of rock in between them as they grow. So it'd be like, a tree with rocks that land on top of it, and then it just grows around them. And they do that over and over, year after year, and they're super cool because they preserve those rocks, and we can look at how the conditions of those rocks changed as they evolved or as they grew.
Cyanobacteria is so weird to me. I love it.
Yeah.
I have a second question.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
It's okay to ask now? Okay.
Yeah.
What would have been hunting Argentinosaurus? Because they were huge.
They were huge, but they weren't born huge. And I imagine a significant portion of them would die before they hit adulthood. Not to say that they didn't have any predators when they were adults. I would assume that, probably most of the predators that ate Argentinosaurus would target their young, but
if you look at whales, I think whales are kind of similar because there isn't really anything predating on like an adult blue whale, but there are things that predate on infant blue whales or just like young blue whales.
Yeah. And even with that being said, there are really large carnivores that coexist, and probably if they were mobbing together, could kill an adult Argentinosaurus. In the area, like I think Winquil has. I don't know how late Meraxes was, but there are loads of like big Carcharodontosaurids around there.
All right. I have a third question, if it's okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think would have happened if the meteor never hit Earth?
I definitely don't think that we would see any humans around today. I would expect that what we call the Mesozoic would continue for another several million years. But also, the positions of the continents today are less conducive to reptile life. Global cooling might still occur, in what we would now refer to as like the not the Paleozoic, the Paleogene. Yeah, that comes after the Cretaceous. And as polar ecosystems solidified, I imagine that dinosaurs probably would be less likely to survive there compared to mammals, and you might start to see some mammal-dominated ecosystems, just like you still see some reptile-dominated ecosystems today. But I imagine that dinosaurs would stick around for, a pretty long time. Because that's kind of what dinosaurs are good at doing. I mean, we still have dinosaurs around today as the birds. I think pterosaurs would do pretty well. I imagine that you would get a lot of change of marine ecosystems. I don't think mosasaurs would be surviving for another 100 million years. Dinosaurs probably would, though. And I imagine that mammals could, because they were pretty on top of the nocturnal niches that were around during the Mesozoic.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Have a great night.
You too.
Me too.
See ya.